Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and so much huge, incredible Nintendo Switch 2 news has been happening as of late. Gamescom has come, there are different demos out there, a lot of big announcements have been coming from third parties, but even some things that we've been waiting such a long time for that people are beginning to think would never be happening. We finally have a release date for Silksong, and it's coming very soon, and there have been some great things said about the game. There are a number of impressions for different games coming to Switch 2, some of which are very exciting, some others, perhaps not so much. But then we also have some very interesting news regarding some pretty big first-party Nintendo titles, such as Pokemon Legends ZA, and yes, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. We have some pretty exciting news regarding this game, my most anticipated game of the year. It doesn't just have to do with release timing, although that is a part of it, and it's promising there is more. So we have a lot of exciting stuff to get into today. To start things off, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a game made by Bethesda, owned by Microsoft, has been announced for Nintendo Switch 2. It is happening, it's been rumored, and now it's confirmed. It's another game that was initially rumored by Nash Weedle, another game that he has gotten correct. He's also saying, Sea of Thieves, I don't know if it's the next one announced, but it should be the first to arrive on Switch 2. So, this is a rumor, right, but he's continually getting things right, so I would say it bodes well for Sea of Thieves to be coming fairly soon. Another Microsoft title, according to Nate the Hate, that's coming to Switch 2 in 2026 is Starfield. That's a huge one. So it looks like when some people have been saying that the true third-party support for Switch 2 will begin in 2026, this is some of what they had in mind, a lot of huge Microsoft titles, such as Indiana Jones and Starfield. But those are not the only exciting third-party announcements that have happened as of late. Bubsy 4D has been announced for Switch 2 and Switch 1. And I really found the trailer to be quite charming. There's references to Mario, they reference an Italian plumber, they reference a blur like Sonic, and they even kind of have this self-aware joke of, oh, Atari's still around, this is from Atari, so it's a very interesting trailer, a nice callback to the series from way back when, and this latest version of Bubsy is looking like a pretty fun platformer. Something else from a time long ago that we've gotten some interesting news about is Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. So a couple years ago, 3 years ago, Stephen Kick from Night Dive Studios, a studio responsible for a lot of remasters, had said, we've had discussions with Nintendo over the years about remastering a number of their games, and they always get gun-shy working with third-party developers even after Night Dive Studios released the first N64 games on their platform. And just earlier today, we got a report of him saying this. I will say there's another game really high in that list, and that would have to be Eternal Darkness. It's been kind of locked behind the GameCube Nintendo wall all this time, and it's something that I would personally love to see get released. So, there's no confirmation, there's no even rumor that it's going to happen, but there is a consistent, persistent interest in a remastering of Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem. So, that's at least something here, and I think Nintendo would eventually be open to this idea. If Nintendo's willing to put out games like Emio or market Pokemon in a creepy, weird way, I think they would be open to Eternal Darkness. The circumstances just have to be just right. So fingers crossed, they work on this and it happens. Now, I understand that they would have to make some changes because it would no longer be on Nintendo GameCube. They would have to think about the audience playing it on what I would assume would be a Switch 2, but at least we have some hope here. Going beyond some hope though, we recently got an announcement of Shenmue 3 Enhanced coming to Nintendo platforms. And Shenmue 3 is going to have a variety of enhancements, enhanced graphics and performance, sharper textures, richer details, faster load times, smoother gameplay, a 4K texture uplift, that sounds like something that would work for Switch 2, not Switch 1, DLSS, something else that would work for Switch 2, high quality upscaling, without sacrificing performance, increased NPC density, more people around the environment, classic camera mode, gameplay tweaks, improved interactions, and other quality of life updates. That sounds like a quality remaster that's in the works here. Something else that we got news on just last night, Trails in the Sky First Chapter is getting a Nintendo Switch 2 version. and the prologue demo is now available on PlayStation 5, Switch, and PC. But some of you may be curious on some of the demonstrations that are happening at Gamescom, and here's some interesting news. Final Fantasy VII Remake plays great. People are saying great things about this demonstration of 7 Remake on Switch 2, which is wonderful. However, it's not all good news, because people are also saying some negative things about Elden Ring Tarnished Edition on Switch 2. People are comparing it to playing like an N64 game like Ocarina of Time, where it drops down to 20 frames per second, or even in some case seemingly 15 frames per second, which is, well, horrendous. And Bandai Namco is not even allowing people to record gameplay of this demonstration. The prevailing thought right now is that this is not the final version. That's part of the reason why they're not allowing the gameplay to be shown, and the final version will be far more playable. And we've seen this before. A variety of games we see early demonstrations for, and then the actual version that comes out just a few short months later is running a lot better, because this build is likely not the most up-to-date version of the game. These builds that they put together for these demonstrations were likely put together a while ago. And I gotta say, anyone who's using this as an argument that Switch 2 can't run third-party games, there are other games arguably more impressive, or just about as impressive, that are running well on Switch 2. We just talked about Final Fantasy VII Remake, Cyberpunk earlier this year. We factually know that Switch 2 is more powerful than PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and Elden Ring had better performance on those consoles. This is more so an issue of the game's not complete yet, it's a port, there's a lack of optimization, they may have not have had that time to work on this. I don't think this says anything really about Switch 2's capabilities. I also don't think it says anything about Dust Bloods, because that's been made ground up for Switch 2. Because that is a Switch 2 exclusive, so obviously it's going to be optimized more so for the platform. This more so has to do with the situation regarding this project, and I'm hoping it runs better by the time it does come out, but we shall see. Today we just got some pretty significant news though. It has been confirmed with a release date trailer. Silksong, Hollow Knight Silksong, is coming out very soon. September 4th. We finally have an official release date. It's happening. It's just around the corner. The wait is finally over. And for those wondering why it's taking so long, this is what Team Cherry said about their 7-year development cycle. It was never stuck or anything. It was always progressing. It's just a case that we are a small team, and games take a lot of time. There wasn't any big controversial moment behind it. We are very fortunate that we have a development method that is so enjoyable. It's also mentioned in the Bloomberg article that the team already has some ambitious plans ahead for post-launch extra content to Silksong. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Silksong initially planned to be DLC for Hollow Knight and became its own game? So things might be going full circle here, and they'll announce some sort of DLC for Silksong after it's a massive success, and that will take another several years before it comes out and it's its own independent, exciting release. That would be hilarious, or perhaps not so hilarious for people that have been exasperated by the wait, but keep in mind, this is an indie title made by a small team. That said, I will point out, Hollow Knight has sold many copies, over 15 million units, according to Team Cherry via this recent Bloomberg article. That's up 12 million since last reported December of 2020. That is insane. This is a huge game. It does have you wondering, why didn't Team Cherry expand on their team? Maybe because they just enjoyed the process, and they like working together, and that's it. Something else worthy of note is that people have been reporting that Silksong was running at 120 frames per second on Switch 2 at Gamescom. That's pretty impressive. I'm looking forward to playing this smooth experience in just a couple short weeks. But let's now move on to some first-party news. There is this recent post from Necrofelipe of Universal Nintendo that I think is worth bringing up here. Here it's translated. It seems that Nintendo has updated the compatibility between Switch 1 and Switch 2 for several games. He's working on an article to catalog all of this, but here he says, this one in this case would be for Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, updated today. So they're continually working on updates between Switch 1 and Switch 2 compatibility. And I think this one's worthy of note here, because we have heard of Xenoblade Chronicles X having a 60 FPS version within the code of the game, but obviously Switch 1 can't run that, so we've been thinking that that is some evidence that there will be an enhanced version for Switch 2. Nothing has been officially announced yet, but maybe they'll make some sort of announcement in the not-so-distant future to provide a 60 FPS mode as Xenoblade Chronicles X on Switch 2. I actually haven't played through the game yet because when I picked it up for Switch 1, granted, I played it on Wii U, I beat it back on Wii U, but I haven't played through the Definitive Edition because my Switch was already so old and broken that it couldn't run open-world games for more than 10 minutes before overheating. So I had to wait for Switch 2, but since there's a 60 FPS version that may be in the works, I'm kind of waiting. I've been playing other games in the meanwhile, so fingers crossed something's announced relatively soon. We'll see. Now, we've recently gotten some pretty substantial news for Pokemon Legends ZA. Every day or two, it seems like more and more is coming out. It appears that we've entered the big marketing cycle, the big marketing campaign for Pokemon, where a whole bunch of news is going to be popping up quite frequently. One interesting detail we just learned is how the speed stat works in Legends ZA. So, as it says here, the higher a Pokemon's speed is, the sooner it will be able to use moves. In other words, this stat shortens the cooldown time between moves. So, keep in mind that Pokemon Legends ZA, the combat system does not work like the other mainline Pokemon games, where it's turn-based. In Legends ZA, everything is real-time. So you're pressing moves as you can moving around, right? So where does the speed stat come into play? With cooldown. So the faster a Pokemon, the faster they will be able to get back to doing different moves. But the big Pokemon news that's dominating the day is the recent announcement of Mega Victory Bell. Victory Bell, one of the OGs, is getting a Mega Evolution. Pokemon Company was teasing this a couple days ago, showing off what appears to be like a scary spoof of found footage. They actually did this before with Hisuian Zoroark for Pokemon Legends Arceus. A lot of people seem to have forgotten that, but they've done it again. This time, actually, when the trailer came out today, it was a little bit more funny. But yeah, we see Mega Victory Bell, and then they actually had a normal trailer showing normal gameplay as well. And it's a funny looking design. I think it's a cute design. I'm all for interesting designs like this in Pokemon. My only kind of criticism, and it's not even maybe even a fair criticism in this case, but it's just something I'm personally thinking about, is that Legends Arceus and ZA don't have abilities for the Pokemon. Abilities are an extra little thing that's considered for the other Pokemon games where they can do different things like absorb fire, or turn status moves into high speed priority moves like Quick Attack, or be able to double your speed in sunlight with chlorophyll like Victory Bell was able to. When you introduce interesting new forms of Pokemon like Mega Evolutions, I'm always curious about what kind of ability that may have, because that helps to differentiate the Pokemon and make it more interesting. Because there aren't abilities in Legends ZA, I personally feel like the allure of new Pokemon forms and such loses a little bit of its luster because we don't get to see as much variation because there's a lack of abilities. That said, there are stats, there are moves, there are other things about a Pokemon that give it its identity and a different feel in the game. And I assume eventually we will learn about whatever ability Mega Victory Bell has for the other games in the not-so-distant future. But on to the most exciting story of the day, at least for me, and that is having to do with Metroid Prime 4. It's been a long roller coaster, Metroid Prime 4. We get good news, people still don't think it's good news. We get good news, people still don't think it's good news. We get something that maybe could be interpreted as bad news and people run with it. And it's just been this wild roller coaster here. Where's the Metroid Prime 4 release date? People have been waiting and waiting and waiting. So much so that they announced a Kirby Air Riders Direct, and that pisses them off, which I don't think is fair. I think it's completely separate, has nothing to do with Kirby. But earlier this week, we got an update about Nintendo Live 2025 Tokyo. And so it's being held on October 4th and 5th. And when we go to the website and look at the games that are going to be featured as playable demos for Switch 2, we have Kirby Air Riders, which was just shown off in the Direct, Legends ZA, which we're getting a whole bunch of news for, Dragon Drive, which just came out and came out to pretty subpar reviews, and then Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza that have been out for months already. But no Metroid Prime 4. So people see this one thing and start to freak out and think Metroid Prime 4 is getting delayed. However, shortly afterwards, what happened? Well, we started getting more ratings for Metroid Prime 4. We got this PEGI rating update on the Metroid Prime 4 website from Nintendo of UK and from Nintendo of North America. They've also rated the game the ESRB rating, it's rated teen for animated blood and violence. There was already a few ratings from a few different regions before, as we've discussed before, which were promising news that Prime 4 was approaching total completion and a release date for sometime in this year, as Nintendo's been telling us for over a year already, repeatedly. But now that multiple ratings have come out at the same time, especially the ESRB rating, this bodes extremely well. It's very promising. This tells us that, yeah, the game is very, very, very close. It would be one thing if it was just one rating, maybe two, but this is now several and multiple coming out at the same time. We're really close here to some actual official announcements straight from Nintendo about this game, like a new trailer, perhaps a release date announcement. And so we're near the end of August here. I don't know if we're going to be getting an announcement in August, but we're getting very close, probably in the widely expected September Nintendo Direct, and there we'll learn when Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is coming out. As we've been talking about over the last few months, it's been looking like Metroid Prime 4 is either coming out sometime around Halloween, maybe a week later, November 6th, or perhaps later into the year, like December. With Kirby Air Riders now coming out right before Black Friday and Thanksgiving, Metroid Prime 4 is most likely not going to be a mid to late November release, so we're either talking about late October, early November, or December. And given the art book is actually coming out October 28th, I'm thinking Prime 4 might just be a Halloween title, but we don't know. They haven't said anything yet. We would probably find out next month, and I guess next month Nintendo will go into high gear marketing and showing everything there is to know about Metroid Prime 4, which we've been talking about, speculating on, is actually a great deal. Like, you literally look at this key art here. This key art shows a massive desert in the background that we have not seen in any of the Metroid gameplay yet. This is a huge environment with varying points of interest. There are just things about this game we just don't know about, so I'm waiting. I really think what we've seen so far is just the very beginning of the game, very similar to Ingot Isle and the Lagoon Lair like we saw with Bonanza. All we've seen is that beginning level that takes just a few short minutes in the opening moments of Vuros. But there's a little bit more news here that could become an entire other conversation. And that's that this new rating that's come out in multiple regions, as I've already said, also includes mention of in-game purchases. What could these in-game purchases mean? It could mean a lot. It could also mean very little. It could be something as simple as perhaps maybe the ability to buy the Switch 2 version of Metroid Prime 4. That could be it. It could be that simple. Maybe you bought the Switch 1 version of Metroid Prime 4 and you're playing this game, and you're playing on your Switch 2 and you want to enhance the game, so you then buy the Switch 2 version. The upgrade pack of it, not the whole game again. Which I believe would just be a $10 USD upgrade. Could be something that simple. It also could be something a bit more substantial, maybe like actual new DLC stuff, like new content. Like, what if there is multiplayer in Metroid Prime 4 and it's going to be a massive multiplayer and there's a season pass to pay for? That's a possibility. At this stage, I'm not really expecting multiplayer in Metroid Prime 4, and not in like the traditional sense like a Call of Duty or a Halo. But Nintendo hasn't said that much about this game, so we're not sure yet. Regardless, these recent ratings bode well for Metroid Prime 4. I don't think we should be expecting a delay. Keep in mind, we are at the end of August. The more time passes without Nintendo saying Metroid Prime 4 has been delayed, the less likely it's going to be delayed. Because you don't wait this long into the year and not announce that it's getting delayed. You would have done that way earlier into the year if it wasn't coming out this year. So the fact that Nintendo hasn't said anything yet, I think has more so to do with a particular strategy they have in mind that may seem a little mind-boggling. Maybe they were waiting for the game to reach a certain level of completion so they can announce a specific date. But considering the craziness of things here, it's honestly reminding me of different times in the past where people were freaking out about Nintendo giving us news, and it ended up leading to a very successful launch for certain games, like Tears of the Kingdom, for example. I remember in the February Direct, they had given us a trailer, and we knew the game was coming out soon, but they had barely told us anything about the game, so people were getting worried. What's going on with the game? Waiting and waiting and waiting. until it seemed like it was too late, and then Nintendo announces the presentation with the Numa, talking about giving us that proper demonstration of how Tears of the Kingdom plays, and then a whole bunch of news came out for the game. We learned so much, and then the game came out and sold over 20 million copies nearly instantly. I'm not saying Prime 4 would sell 20 million copies instantly, that would be amazing, but I'm just saying that there might be a little bit of a similarity here in the sense that Nintendo's being very quiet. We know some things about the game, we know it's supposed to come out this year, but they're waiting so long to the point where fans are starting to get really worried. There's a lot of conversation. It's leading to Metroid Prime 4 being in the minds of many, wondering what's going on. And then all of a sudden, Nintendo may just be like, hey, here it is, and now we're going to talk about this game like crazy for like 6 weeks. You're going to be super excited about it, and there's going to be this massive wave of excitement going into the release of the game. Maybe that's what's going down here. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.